The MS Michigan Man 64 podcast. My name is Brian Wallace, and I am the MS Michigan Man 64. The MS Michigan Man 64 podcast is about chronic disease awareness. I have had multiple sclerosis for the last 27 years. It's an invisible chronic disease that I've been battling for half of my life. I want to share with you what it is like living with the chronic disease from my experiences and the experiences of other chronic disease warriors. We can fight to have a voice to those that want to listen. Together, we can motivate and educate. Hi, and welcome to the MS Michigan Man 64 podcast. Today, I am sitting down with a friend of mine that I met through social media. He is from England, and he was just diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2023. Please welcome to the podcast, Philip. How you doing, Philip?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, Brian.
Good. So, Philip, we've been talking for probably about 6 months or so, and I know that you're newer diagnosed, and you had contacted me, and we kind of grew a friendship. Can you just kind of like tell everybody, how you were diagnosed, how old you were, what kind of symptoms you were having that threw the red flags up that something wasn't right?
Well, it was, so for a while I was having issues with my lower back, pain and pins and needles and stuff down the right leg. I was going to physio at the time, and I was having certain symptoms, and the physiotherapist was a bit concerned, so he sent me to the accident and emergency to have scans done and whatever. So he did me an MRI, and they found I had prolapsed discs in my lower back. Mm-hmm. But they'd noticed some inflammation at the middle, because where they took the MRI, obviously it was from the middle of the back down to like the hip or the tailbone. Mm-hmm. And they'd noticed inflammation anyway going further up. So I was then called back for another MRI from the head down to the bottom of my back. And that showed multiple intracranial lesions. I can't remember each one. I do have notes somewhere. Yeah. But yeah, so from there, that was so the lesions was found. I then had I had blood tests, and I had a lumbar puncture done.
Oh, you had the lumbar puncture done too, and that came back positive for the MS too. Jeez.
Yeah, so it came back for them. I'll say what they're looking for.
So how old are you at this time, Philip?
So I'm currently 39. I'll be 40 April time.
So you were around 37, 36.
Yeah.
Wow. So when you got that diagnosis that you got multiple sclerosis, what were the thoughts that were going through your head? I mean, what did you know what multiple sclerosis was, or how did that go?
Well, certain symptoms that I was having at the time, I would never have guessed were MS. It's not something that I'd have heard about, but what I had heard about, and it was quite frequent in the news and certain places I was looking and stuff, was MND, and that's motor neuron disease. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I went to see my consultant and he told me that I had MS, I said, well, I'm glad, because I thought he was going to come back and tell me it was MND. Yeah. So I didn't know anything about MS. So then when obviously he was explaining certain stuff to me, I was terrified, because obviously I didn't understand. Same when I went to see the MS team. They kind of scared me that much, where I felt like when I made my choice for treatment, I kind of felt like it wasn't fully my choice.
So tell me more about that, because I mean you're going through your treatment in the UK, which is completely different from the healthcare over here in the United States.
Yeah,
When I was diagnosed back in '97, there were only three DMTs, and I didn't really have a choice in the matter back then. But since the DMTs have increased, my neurologist actually tells me about the new meds that are out, and he gives me a choice. He's like, here, do your
yeah,
research on it. I know you do your research. So that's the way the doctors over here, and it's interesting just to hear the difference and how it's handled over there. And so they
yeah.
what kind of a DMT did they put you on?
Well, so when I spoke to the consultant, he went through all the treatments that were there. So there was obviously there was the tablet form, there was injections, and there was infusions. So he said that the tablet forms and stuff were like the beginning of the spectrum. And then obviously as things stop working, then you'll go along and you try different, other ones. So I was assuming that I could just start off on the tablets. So my first appointment with the MS team, they turned around and so I said, look, I'd be happy enough just taking tablets. And he said, oh, no, you're too far gone for that. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And he says, because when I was diagnosed with MS, I was diagnosed with highly active, relapsing, remitting MS.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, I was having a relapse every couple of months.
Oh,
So I was having, yeah. So it was very active. So
So,
yeah.
so,
So I mean,
so just out of curiosity, I know if I have an episode over here, I call my neurologist or I text him and I send him a message, and I'm usually within his office within a couple of days getting a Salumedrol treatment for 5 days. It's a steroid treatment.
yeah.
How do the doctors and how does the medicine over in England, if you
um,
have an episode, how is it handled over there?
well, it's pretty much non-existent. So I phone up my MS team. I had to send an email to my neurologist just to get him to pull his finger out and get me an appointment. And I was told, oh, well, we can't see you till late March. And I was like, well, I'm going through some stuff right now,
Mm-hmm.
and I could really do with seeing you. So he's given me an appointment, but where he's given me the appointment, it's not exactly, it's difficult to reach because obviously I'm reliant on public transport.
Yeah, yeah,
And same with the MS team. I mean, every time I phone the MS team, it's like everything gets dismissed. Oh, it's not your MS, it's not this, it's not that. And I'm like, well, okay, if it's not this, it's not that, then what is it? So now I get to the point where I was like, well, what's the point in even phoning them to be just told that, well, it's not this, it's not that. I'm waiting on an emergency MRI for these things I've got going on at the moment,
mm-hmm.
and that's a couple of weeks ago. So it's like, well, if you don't care, then why am I going to bother asking you? You tell me that if anything's going on to ring us,
Right.
and you dismiss everything that I say. So
God,
but yeah, going back,
that's got to be so frustrating, Philip. I can't.
yeah, it is.
Yeah, and especially being a newer diagnose of MS, and I know the fear that's going through your head, and you're like, it's almost like you have nowhere to turn to
Yeah,
get
because
any
I
kind
don't
of answers.
understand. It would just be nice for somebody just to explain it
Yeah.
and actually listen instead of just dismissing everything. It's like going back to the first appointment I had with the MS team. So they said that I was too far gone. That tablet form wouldn't be just wouldn't work for me.
Hmm.
So the only options that I had was either the injection or the infusion. Now the injection I was a bit apprehensive about taking because you're doing that in a home setting. So if anything goes wrong, then you need to go and get to the hospital quick. Whereas the infusions, it's done in hospital. It's an all day thing,
Right.
and if anything goes wrong, you're in the best place possible to look after. And so, like, I mean, I've only had 3 treatments, and every time I've had a reaction to it. So
You have
it's
an
a case
allergic
of,
reaction to it.
uh, yeah. So then a case of, so they stop the treatment, they reduced it, so they stop the treatment, they wait half an hour, they then start the treatment again after doing blood pressure and checks, and then they'll restart it at a reduced rate, and then they just slowly build it up. And normally in that time, I'll get more antihistamines and stuff, and then then I'll be able to complete the course. But it's every time I've had it now. I've only had it 3 times, so every time I've had some sort of reaction to it.
Wow.
But they say it's working though. So
yeah, okay, but yeah, it's working. But you're still having some issues that you're trying to get figured. You know, and Philip, I know how frustrating this disease can be. Especially the mental part of it, and it affects like lives. Your family lives. So when you got diagnosed, and how did your family accept it? I mean, I know you have a daughter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, how did your family accept the diagnosis of MS? Because I mean, that's a life changer for everybody involved in it, not just you.
Well, the thing is how do I explain it if I don't even understand it myself?
Yeah.
I mean, I can say that, well, look, I've got MS, but telling people that, I mean, I don't even understand it myself. So, I can say that, well, look, I've got MS. This is my symptoms, and this is what I'm going through. But other than that, I mean, I don't know. I have family members that support me and that I can turn to if I'm having a rough day.
So how have you self-educated yourself since your diagnosis? I mean, how have you learned what MS is? I mean, you're not getting a lot of answers from your medical teams. So I mean, how are you getting answers to it?
Well, I mean, I've not really helped myself because I've not really done much research. I've done a little bit of research, but the notes, like my medical notes, I only read them the other day after I got them back by my counsellor. And I think it was, so I did. I know something's wrong with me. I know they tell me that it's MS and stuff, but I didn't want to accept it. I didn't want to accept that I had this thing going on that totally changed my life.
Yeah.
And pretty much until I read them notes the other night, I've now been like, well, look, it's there, it's in black and white. Yep. You can't hide from that.
Yeah, it's you can't run away from it. And it's a hard thing to accept, Philip. I know, you were in your 30s getting diagnosed. I was in my 20s, and after getting done playing football at the University of Michigan and all that, and I'm thinking I'm indestructible, and then getting hit with MS, and I'm like, I was kind of like, you know what? MS isn't going to stop me. I'm just going to keep on plowing through, and and I had to self-teach myself, kind of, because back then the internet wasn't around on what MS is, and just try to figure this all out on my own. And it's a scary disease. So, and I know that, getting diagnosed with this disease is just a life changer. And the one thing that I really like about talking with you, though, Philip, is you're always asking questions. I mean, you're always asking me questions about this. And that's the part I think that's the nicest thing about getting diagnosed now today is we got the internet. When I got diagnosed in 97, I would have never have met you, because we didn't have the capabilities of doing that. And now we have that capability of connecting with people all over the world that's going through the same shit that we're going through.
It's nice to be able to reach out and ask you questions, because like I say, you've been dealing with this a hell of a lot longer than what I have. So this is all new to me. So if I could, pick your brain and get some kind of answers to just kind of give me something to what I'm going through. Do you know what I mean? I mean, you're helping me more than what the MS team and the neurologists, and they're supposed to be the professionals. So
I appreciate that, Philip. I like to use my 27 years, and if it can help somebody just to understand it a little better, I'm all for it. And that's why I like talking to people with this disease, just to try to let them know, hey, this isn't a death sentence. You got a lot of life left to live. And you do too, Philip. I know that you still get up every day and you still bust your ass every day, and even on your bad days, and you're texting me and you're telling me you're having a bad day. What do you do tomorrow? You get up and go to work, and you still do it. And that's the way we are.
I'm working on. I've reduced my days, but I still get up and go there, and even when I'm having a rough day, because it's better than staying at home and wallowing in self pity. Don't get me wrong. There's good days and bad days, and some days are better than others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you know what? The sun's going to come up tomorrow, Philip, and we just got to keep going, because we can't sit there and feel sorry for ourselves, because life's not going to stop. It's going to keep going. No. So the sooner that we realize that, I think the better off that we are. And when we're going to go through our rough times, there were times where I didn't want to be alive, and I don't think that that's an odd feeling to have when you have this disease.
No, I've been through that.
Yeah, but the biggest thing that I totally just beg people to do is, if you do have those thoughts, please go and talk to a doctor, and because there's medications. I know I got put on an antidepressant that helped me so much, but the mental health part of this disease, that is that's the biggest battle for me, is the mental part of it. I can deal with the physical part, the pain. I can learn to live with that, but the mental part, it's a 24/7, 365-day-a-year issue for me.
That's why I'm grateful I have a counsellor. So I have a counsellor from the MS Society, and he rings me every Thursday, and we just go through some stuff that how I'm feeling and what's been going on. And like I say, the more people that I've got that I can talk to and that I can listen, it really does help.
It does, yeah. I mean, I've always been a person, ever since I was a little kid. Even my dad used to tell me, you learn from people that have experience, and that's pretty much what I've done my whole life. I sit and watch people and I ask questions, and I'm still learning about MS, just talking to people that are just newly diagnosed, and learning what they're going through, learning what you're going through. There's
well, they say we're all.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, they say that we're all different, that we're all on our own journey, but there's things that I've spoke to you about recently, and you've said that you've been through similar situations, and that has helped me so much to know that I am not the only one.
Yeah. Absolutely, man. I try to tell everybody, especially when they're newer in this disease, 5 years, I know every emotion that you're going through, because I've been there, I've done it. I've been down on the ground so many times, and it's hard to get back up, but you got to keep on doing it, and you have to. It's a lifelong battle, but it's not an undoable battle. So, Philip, I know I've developed a lot of different tools that I use in my 27 years just to kind of occupy my time, because I got a lot of alone time, not being able to work out in the public. And what kind of tools have you developed to just kind of occupy your mind? Because people with chronic diseases, you got to be creative. So what have you done, Philip?
So basically, especially when I won't go into work, and I'll buy a couple of newspapers. And I don't really read the newspaper. I just go straight to the puzzle page, and I'll do the Sudoku.
Okay.
It's about the only puzzle that I can do. But I have an app on my phone, and it's called Beat Machines. And what it is it's where you make music, so you can add drums and different sounds and stuff. So I do actually like doing that. It gives me enjoyment, and it takes my mind off what I can be thinking about all the time.
Yeah, I get it. I have a couple of apps on my phone that I use. I play a silly golf game, but I mean, those are the things. I mean, it's as silly as it sounds. Those things are good for our mental health. I mean, but you got to customize your own MS. I mean, just because I like playing this golf game doesn't mean you're going to like playing it. And just because you like Sudoku doesn't mean I'm going to like it. But I mean, you got to figure it out. And I love that, Philip. I love that. I love that you figured out. You're figuring it out, and this is going to be the rest of your life. You're going to be figuring this out. But that's the great thing that I like about talking to you is that you dove into this diagnosis and you're like, what, I got to figure this out one way or another. And that's what I really like about talking with you, Philip.
Well, I mean, we don't really have a choice. We either get on with it or just,
Yeah.
Or I think it makes it, we'll suffer a lot more if we don't, grab it by the horns and take control. And I'm not saying that that's going to be easy every day because it's not. But yeah, so it's each day at a time, just taking it slowly.
Yeah. So let me ask you this question, Philip, because I've been doing this 27 years, and now you've been doing it a couple of years, but you've been, I guess, atypical, a lot longer before that, 35 years. What has been your experience as far as how society has changed or how they treat you? Because I noticed that as my disease progressed, I mean, back when you couldn't tell that I had MS, I was still golfing and doing all this. People treated me normal, but as I started having to use a cane, having to use a walker, having to use a wheelchair, I started getting treated a lot different by society. And I'm just curious if early in your disease, if you're noticing any of that.
Well, I mean, it's funny you say that. So I have a cane, I have a walker. I think I've used the walking stick once or twice because obviously I'm embarrassed about what other people will think. So I had an appointment at the optician's a week or two ago, and past couple of weeks I've been all over the place with walking, balance, etc. And the looks that I was getting from people, and it's not looks of worry. It's like, I don't know. You can tell what they're thinking. They're thinking, well, look at the state of him. He's all over the place, and they must be thinking, well, is he drunk or is he on some kind of drugs? And it was my brother that had actually said to me that when they see you and you're like that, because they don't see a cane, they just think that, he must be on drugs or he must be drunk. But if they was to see you with your cane, then they would be like, he has a disability, he has something wrong with you. So therefore, it would stop me playing it, because what I found is that when people stare at me because I'm a bit unsteady, I then try and focus on not doing it. And the more I do that, the worse I am. So if I see someone looking at me because I'm wobbling, I'll be like, right, stop wobbling. And because I'm telling myself and concentrating that hard on stopping wobbling, it makes me worse and I wobble more.
Yeah.
So it's that in itself is a battle. But it was my brother that came up with that, and he just said, well, look, if you was to start using your cane because you obviously need it, then people wouldn't look at you in the same way. And he said, it's probably all in your head anyway. Well, not all in your head, but you know what I mean. They're probably not staring at you the way you think. It's just that's something that you've got going on in your own head, kind of thing.
It is.
So he kind of made me open my eyes a little bit more. So I mean, because I'm a very stubborn person, where I feel like I don't need a stick. I can manage on my own, even if I'm struggling. Past couple of weeks, I've been all over the place, and I've really struggled. It used to be my right leg that would trip me up. Now my left decides to do it, and the right one will do it every now and again. So it's like they're both ganging up on me. Just the battles that I have, getting dressed. I have to put my clothes, so say for instance a pair of trousers, I have to put them on the floor, lift my legs to stand in them, and then pull them up. So same with shoes. I can lift my leg up and put it into the shoe, but getting it to sit into the shoe.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's a constant battle.
Oh yeah, I literally have to use my two hands to lift my left leg up to get my shoe on and then tie it because I can't lift my leg up on its own. I have to do it manually with my arms. It's yeah,
Yeah.
you know, going back to the society thing, that's one of the struggles that I had too, Philip, is when I started having to use a cane, I was so self-conscious of it. You know, being a guy, you're like, oh, you know, you're supposed to be strong. That's a sign of weakness. And I was only 45 years old at the time. And I know that was a mental battle too. And I know that everybody goes through that. But once I started realizing, you know what, it's better to use that cane than to be fallen. You know, I mean, it helped me that much, you know, just the amount of energy I used using the cane as opposed to not using the cane. It's unbelievable, you know, until you actually start using it, realizing, oh my God, it's so much easier. Why did I fight this thing so much?
Yeah. Well, what I would like to say is recently I've made a friend through the Discord group.
Yeah.
And I was just explaining the issues that I'm having even putting a pair of socks on. And she's from America, and she'd found this thing, and it goes on the back of your shoe and it helps you pull your shoe on. And there's another device where you put your sock over it and you put your foot into it. And somehow it's just an easier way of doing things, putting socks on and getting shoes on. And it's little things like that you can reach out to people.
Yeah.
And just by them listening to you, that can offer you a solution. Now, that solution would really, really help me and probably really help many more, you know, and that's not something that I would have even thought of.
No, you don't think about it until you're actually in the seat, you know, and that's the part that I'm trying to get people to understand that don't even have this disease to, like, you know, I'm not saying you have to be an expert on MS or anything like that, but just try to understand it a little bit better. You know, this disease affects 2.5 million, 3 million people worldwide. I mean, there's a lot of people affected by this disease, but it doesn't seem like a whole lot of people really know anything about this disease, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Philip, man, I really want to thank you so much for taking the time out to talk with me about your MS. Is there anything else that you want to, you know, just let people know that are going through the same thing that you're going through? You're newer in your diagnosis, just how to, you know, to advocate for yourself or how to figure things out and not be afraid.
Yeah, just don't give up. Always reach out. You know, there's always someone willing to listen. And what I would say is that, you know, if you have any kind of health issue, don't leave it to chance. Always get it checked out. Yeah. And if you don't feel that you're getting the right kind of answers, there's always a second opinion. And just generally don't give in. You know, it's too easy to give up. That's pretty much it.
I appreciate you, Philip, man. You know, that's words to live by. Everything, and it's like I said, I am so impressed with just your attitude with this disease, so young in your journey with it, and you just seem like you're on the right path, man. And you can always reach out to me. You know how to get a hold of me. I'm always here for you if you ever want to talk. And I really appreciate you coming on here and talking with me, buddy.
No problem. I appreciate you giving me the time.
All right. This is MS Michigan, man. I am going to get out of here. Don't forget to follow me on TikTok, MS Michigan Man 64, and I'm on Instagram, MS Michigan Man 64. You can also catch me on Facebook, Brian Wallace out of Brunswick, Ohio. Until the next episode, I am out.